It was the morning of December 23rd, and Iris was shunting at the container yard. She was being worked off her wheels. Extra shipments of Christmas supplies and shop stock had been arriving over the last few weeks, and it was all she could do to keep up.
I'll be glad when this Christmas thing is over,
she grumbled to herself. All this extra work meant she wasn't able to run her yard as efficiently as she wanted, and she couldn't quite understand all of the fuss. Iris glanced over as Sheffield arrived.
Could you dump them into that spare warehouse? Sheffield? What is that on your dome?
It's a Santa's hat.
A Santa hat? Oh, that's the fat man in the sleigh, isn't it? What's it doing on your dome?
Oh, the Lord Mayor's Carol concert is on in Knapford tonight. I've been asked to look after the coaches for the extra trains bringing people for it.
That still doesn't explain the hat.
It's something to entertain the kids when I'm at the station. There's no harm in it. I mean, it's wired down.
Seems to be a bunch of silly hoo-ha about nothing, if you ask me.
In her previous life, shunting at a munitions factory, Iris had never had time for any sort of celebrations like that.
Oh, come on. Where's your Christmas spirit?
Iris glanced over as Peter departed with one of his trains.
There's a shipment of something called eggnog in that container over there.
No, I meant Christmas spirit, not Christmas spirits.
Iris just looked blankly at Sheffield.
You really don't have a clue, do you?
I don't see that there's anything to have a clue about, Sheffield. All this extra traffic is impacting the efficiency of my yard, and I can't see what the purpose of it is.
Munitions factory, wasn't it? Where you used to work before coming here, I mean.
That's right. It was always closed over Christmas.
Ah, there's your problem.
I don't have a problem, Sheffield.
Oh, yes you do. You're right, Grinjaris. I know. I used to be the same way.
Iris glanced dubiously at the Santa hat perched atop Sheffield's dome.
Really?
Oh, yes. My first proper Christmas was an eye-opener,
said the austerity tank, and he thought back to that day in 1974.
That was on my Heritage Railway, when they were running on North Pole Express a few days before Christmas. Maxwell, the lad's Black Fire, brought the children and their parents to the middle station. Once they were on the platform, I brought Santa down on his sleigh. The kids were excited to see him, and the parents were happy to see their children having a good time. That was when I got it, Iris. Christmas isn't about yourself, it's about doing things for others.
Then by that token, I've been doing plenty. I mean, look at all these extra shipments. It's all I can do to keep up.
That's not it. That's just doing your job.
But that's not what you said a moment ago.
It's the motive. You'll understand when you get it. I've got to get going.
With that, Sheffield chuffed off to collect his next train. He didn't have all day to try and educate Iris. Iris didn't have time to worry about what Sheffield had told her. As she'd said, she was too busy trying to keep up with the shipments coming into and out of the yard. To make matters worse, it had started raining just after lunch, turning the snow on the ground into an icy, slushy mess. It was a hazard for the workmen, and as such, resulted in several small delays. It had stopped raining by afternoon tea time, and Patrick was approaching the container yard with the train from Barrow. As usual, he slowed to take the crossover onto the arrival track. But, as he crossed the point, he found himself bumping up and off the rails.
Help!
Several of the workmen came running over. They quickly checked the diesel to make sure he was alright, then turned their attention to the track.
Are you alright, Patrick?
Peter asked, from where he was waiting on the departure track.
I think so.
Patrick? What happened?
I don't quite know, Iris. I was just taking the crossover as usual, then things turned unusual.
It was the ice, Patrick. It looks like those points were frozen solid against you.
That would do it.
Patrick glanced back at his flat cars, some of which had also derailed. He frowned as he realized that both tracks into the container yard were now blocked.
How soon can you clear one of these tracks? The container yard's cut off.
We'll have to get the breakdown train in, and make sure there's no damage to the track. Could be a few hours.
What? But I've got shipments to get out!
I'm sorry, Iris, but we'll have to make sure the track is safe before we can let any trains cross.
Don't stress, Iris. It's an unpleasant situation, but it can't be helped.
Lost in thought, Iris didn't reply immediately. On one buffer, she was glad to have the rest. Her axles were aching, and this was the longest she'd stayed still all day. But she knew there was a reason she'd been worked off her wheels. People needed the goods that were flowing through her yard.
I wouldn't say that, Peter. We've still got the return line.
The return line?
That's what Diesel and I call the little line leading into the main yard. We use it to return empty trucks there.
Iris glanced over at Peter's train.
Your container flats won't have a problem, but you might. Those 4 axles of yours may find some curves a bit tight.
Peter smiled as he realised what Iris had in mind.
I suppose I could give it a try.
I'll take your container flats through first, just in case.
Iris's driver quickly made a phone call to let Diesel know to expect them. Once that was done, Iris took the container flats and headed for the return track. I didn't realise you were bringing loaded container flats through, Iris. The yardmaster just told me to leave the track clear for some container trucks.
It's just temporary, Diesel.
Iris replied. He said something about the container yard being blocked off. Before Iris could reply, the slow, careful chuffs of a steam engine reached them. Diesel frowned. You sent one of the mainline engines through that track?
Well, desperate times call for desperate measures, Diesel. We've got to keep these goods moving.
You can say that again.
Peter put in as he steamed into the yard. Iris smiled.
You didn't have any trouble?
No, but it was a bit of a tight squeeze. Anyway, I must be going.
A few minutes later, Peter had been coupled up to the container flat cars and was leaving the yard. Iris, I won't have space to look after your container flats on top of my trucks.
You won't need it. I'll handle them in my yard as usual. They'll just have to depart through here. Can your yard handle that?
I can't see why not.
Thank you, Diesel.
With that, Iris headed back to the container yard. When she got there, Iris found the Fat Controller waiting for her.
Iris, the manager's informed me you sent Peter's train out by the main yard.
That's right, Ma'am.
That's good thinking, Iris.
Thank you, Ma'am.
I've spoken to Sodor Road Freight, and they'll be sending some of their lorries to take some of the containers.
That should make things a bit easier. If I may be excused, Ma'am, I should probably get back to work.
Of course, Iris.
The Fat Controller replied, and Iris quickly headed off. Over the next few hours, Iris worked her hardest, shunting trucks and arranging trains. Most of them she had to deliver to the main yard. But some of the smaller engines were able to pick theirs up directly. Having the lorries helped, too, as they looked after all the deliveries for Tidmouth and Delsbury. The sun was beginning to set by the time Patrick was back on the rails. The Class 40 diesel was glad to feel the steel under his wheels once more. We'll have to give you a thorough inspection, Patrick. That accident may have damaged your prime mover.
Indeed.
Do you need me to help you back to the sheds, Patrick?
If you're not too busy.
Most of today's deliveries have been done. I've just got to get some trucks organised for tomorrow morning. I can do that later.
Patrick smiled.
Thank you, Iris.
Iris gently buffered up to the large diesel, and the two engines were coupled together. With that done, they headed off. They soon arrived at the sheds, and Iris helped Patrick into one of the berths. From one of the other tracks, Alice glanced over. Although she had glimpsed Iris in the main yard, once or twice, the two of them hadn't really met before.
You must be Iris. I'm Alice.
Pleased to meet you.
Thank you for looking after Patrick.
Before Iris could reply, the Fat Controller strode up.
Iris, thank you for bringing Patrick home. Do you still have many shipments to put through your yard?
No, Ma'am.
Iris replied, and she explained what she'd told Patrick.
I see. In that case, can I ask you to help Sheffield with the coaches for tonight's trains?
Of course, ma'am.
Iris said, remembering what Sheffield had told her earlier. She quickly headed off towards Knapford Station. Iris soon reached the station and carefully approached the coaches which had just disgorged their passengers. As she did so, she couldn't help overhearing a conversation taking place on the platform. "How was your day, honey?" asked a young man, whose wife had just arrived on the train.
Busy as usual. You know the shelter gets busy around this time of year.
"Indeed."
We had a bit of a scare earlier. We almost didn't receive a shipment of donations.
"Oh? What happened?"
Some sort of accident at the container yard. It was a relief when it did show up. Maria said she'd have to send the railway a thank you note.
Iris glanced over, slightly surprised.
Excuse me, did you say you work at a shelter?
Both husband and wife turned, surprised at being addressed by the engine.
That's correct. I take a few days off around this time each year to help out the Sudrians United Homeless Shelter in Crosby.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
"Come on, sweetie, we'd better get to the concert."
With that, the two of them departed. A moment later, Sheffield looked over from the next platform.
Sounds like you've made a difference, Iris,
Observed the austerity tank. Iris paused, considering his words for a moment.
Yes, I suppose I have.
She paused again.
Sheffield, what you were saying earlier, I think I'm beginning to understand.
Took you long enough.
Sheffield observed, as Iris moved away with the coaches. It hadn't been something she'd thought about, what the various shipments would be used for, but knowing that her actions had helped people in need, she couldn't help feeling a little warm inside, and Iris knew it wasn't just her prime mover. Maybe, she thought, there was a point to this Christmas thing after all.